So here we have two of the best budget phones that were released from Motorola in 2024. On the left is the G Power and on the right is the G Stylus. Now, which one of these phones worked the best for you? Let's go ahead and compare the two. So first things first, price. With the G Stylus, it comes in at $299 currently, and with the Moto G Power, it comes in at $206. So you're talking about $100 difference there. And so you're probably wondering, what did you get in, terms of you spending $100 more? So you do get quite a little bit more, but we'll go over that later on in the video. But that's where the pricing starts here. Now, when both of these phones came out, they were at different prices. This one was close to $300 and this one was close to $400, if not right at 400. Both phones have 50 megapixel main cameras on the back here, and they both have wide angle cameras. Now, the wide angle is 13 megapixels on the G Stylus, and it's 8 megapixels on the Moto G Power. Now, both are equipped with a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. And if we flip the phones up like this, you can see on the bottom, you're going to have a headphone jack for both, Type-C charging. Both have speaker grills, as you can see. Now, the Stylus, of course, is going to have that stylus right there. All right, so that's one of the differences. And when we turn it over to the side here, this is another difference. The G Power, which is on top here, has the fingerprint scanner that doubles as the power button, along with the volume up and down keys. And the Stylus just has the power button there with the volume up and down. Looking at the top, you see they both have microphones there, and also both have speakers on the top here. Little tiny little cutout grills. Ooh, we want the camera to activate there. Little tiny cutout grills there, so they both have dual speakers. And on the left side, you can see we have our slim tray slot for micro SD card expansion, which is dope. So after going over the outside and physical, features of the device, let's go ahead and look at some of the other features. Now, the screens are both 1080p. They're both 6.7 inches. And like I said, 15 megapixel cameras on the rear. Now, where the difference at is the internal CPU. The G Power is going to have the Dimensity 7020 in it, 8 gigs of RAM, and the G Stylus is going to have the Snapdragon Gen 1, which is in my opinion, a much better processor. Both devices do have 5,000 milliamp hour batteries, 30 watt fast charge, wired, and 15 watt wireless charging. When it comes to the front facing camera, I believe the G Power has a 16 megapixel selfie cam, and the G Stylus has a 32 megapixel selfie cam. Now, another detail with the cameras is that the G Stylus can shoot in 4K, all right, 1080p 60 frames per second, as well as in the front. Now, on the G Power, you can only shoot in 1080p 60 frames per second. So that's something to keep in mind. So that's where one of the differences are too. Another thing too is the screen quality. Now, both are 1080p displays, but the G Power has an IPS display versus a OLED display, POLED display on the G Stylus, and it is a night and day difference. So if that was one of your questions, yes, the POLED is much better. It's a much better display. It's not even close. Now, one of the things I do want to point out here, that's the difference between these two devices, which I find to be a little bit ironic, is the fact that both phones are supposed to get Android 15. Now, the G Power, which is the the cheaper version, and I got this prepaid here, so on Cricket, it's on Android 15 already, and the Moto G Stylus is still on Android 14. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Although when you do have a more capable phone, if you want the latest software, the G Power would have it. Now, this is on Cricket, so I'm not sure if the carriers are more prioritized than the unlocked models, because I have heard of that in the past, but keep that in mind. One of the main things I told you guys earlier is that the screen technology is much better on the G Stylus. So I have the same exact video pulled up here, and I'm going to go ahead and play it on the G Power and show you guys what this looks like. Now, let me cut the volume down here. Now, as you can see, the screen does look really good, and it's at the max resolution that it can produce at 1440p, 60 frames per second, has HDR. And don't get me wrong, this display is beautiful. All right, it looks really good. You won't have an issue when it comes to watching content or consuming content on this device. It's a big 1080p display. It's hard really to complain about it. The only reason complaints come is when you compare it to something like the G Stylus, and you actually literally see the different technology working right in front of your eyes. So I think the only way to really see something like this is if you have both phones next to you. So, well, not necessarily having them next to you, but you would see it for sure. Okay, cut the volume down here. So let me go ahead and max this out. Okay, so it's at max resolution. Yeah. Let me go ahead and cut the brightness up here. One thing I just noticed here, it's not showing HDR. That's interesting. Didn't know that. So there's a display on this one here. So I did turn the brightness up, but you guys can see, just like I had in that Snake scene before, it's a bit difference. In my opinion, it's a big difference. It looks really, really crisp. And it's not just because it's 1440 or 2160. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and jump the resolution down to 1440. Rewind it back a bit. And you guys can still clearly see that it's a much better display. It's not even close. I'm pretty sure this is translating on video here. So the display technology is one of the main things, in my opinion, that you have to consider in terms of like the extra money. You are getting more for the money there. And then what we're going to do now is go over to the paper test, basically Geekbench. So now when it comes to the Dimensity 7020 that's in the G Power here, let me cut this brightness down. You're going to have a single core score of 913, while on the G Stylus is 932. So if you ask me, obviously that's not much of a difference there. I mean, they're both going to be able to do the same task pretty much at the same rate. Now the multi-core is where things get interesting, slightly. 2762 on the G Stylus, while you have 2263 on the G Power. Now, are you going to notice this in everyday performance? With certain things, you can notice it, but is it going to be enough to deter you from actually buying this phone? In my opinion, no. And it actually just depends on, like, entirely depends on what you look for in a phone. Do you have to have the most power? Because those are questions that I always ask people to ask themselves. What matters to you in an everyday phone? Do you prioritize battery life? Do you prioritize display quality? Do you prioritize, cameras, connectivity? Like, what matters to you the most? Build quality, like feel in the hand, does feel a little bit better with the G Stylus, and I think the G Stylus actually looks better. I prefer the like protruding like dimple here versus the the little cheap like plastic thing that looks there. I think the looks is better on the G Stylus. I just think it's a little bit better. And now other things like a 2.2 benchmark is actually better on the G Stylus as well, which is not surprising. 442,151 for the G Power and 564 for the G Stylus. Now both of these tests were ran today, and you can see the version is a little bit different on the Power here versus the G Stylus, but let's be honest here, the scores isn't going to be that much different if I were to get an updated version or a different version. Nonetheless, the G Stylus will perform better. Now, both of these displays do have 120 hertz refresh rate, and I can say, in my humble opinion, things just feel better on the Stylus. To me, it just seems a little bit crisper. Maybe it's just because of the display. And then another thing too, the main thing that's the difference is the actual Stylus itself. Now, I'm not a person that use the Stylus. I'm not really a big Stylus user. I like the phone because of what it performs like. Internal storage. You saw it here on the spec sheets when I was going over it earlier. Let me go back to it. This device does come equipped with 8 gigs of RAM, and it has 256 gigs of storage, while the G Power has 128 gigs of internal storage. So yeah, another thing too, kind of skipping over a few things. The G Stylus has the fingerprint scanner built into the display versus it being on the power button like the G Power. If you're in the market for a phone, man, I think both of these are two great options, even though the new ones are out. I actually think the G Power 2024 is better than the G Power from 2025. And that's just my opinion from a person who actually had both phones in hand and put them next to each other. So yeah, but if you want to spend an extra $100 and get the unlocked version for the G Stylus, I think that's a good option too. You can't really go wrong. The only thing I don't like, and this is if it stays true here, the fact that the G Stylus hasn't been updated to Android 15 as of yet, or if not yet, ever. Neither one of these phones are going to give you an issue when it comes to battery life. But in the comment section below, let me know if you guys want to see anything specific with either one of these phones in a future video. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your family and friends. And I'm going to be out. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.